Hi everyone, welcome to a Lovely Yarn podcast. My name is Amber. I'm the host of this podcast, and today I am coming to you with a special edition, a themed episode. It's been a couple of months since I did one of these. I really enjoy doing them. I am an information girl, so I have a lot of fun researching to find great patterns for you guys. So I spent several hours yesterday, and I think I went through 150 pages of projects on Ravelry to bring to you 25 free worsted weight warm hats to knit this winter. Now, what got me started on this rabbit hole? Well, I purchased this skein of yarn from my friend Jody from Flower Hill Fleeces, and I got this from her maybe in September or October. I can't remember now. I lost the ball band. I wound it up into a ball several weeks ago, and I misplaced the ball band. But in case you are interested in this beautiful, very soft, very luxurious farm yarn, homegrown yarn, as she calls it, I looked it up on the website, and I'm pretty sure that what I have here is the Shetland Alpaca Worsted Single in the medium brown and gray color. And I think it is just so incredibly beautiful. And I knew when I bought this from her that I wanted to knit myself a warm hat, and I wanted to use her beautiful farm yarn from her sheep that she raises. So I set out a couple of weeks ago to find a great pattern to go with this, and then I really got serious about it yesterday because it's been getting quite chilly here, and I wanted to add this new hat to my drawer of knitted hats. So I got serious yesterday, thought I'm gonna find the pattern, and then I ended up thinking, why don't I just do a special episode? Because if I want to knit a warm winter hat, perhaps some of you would like to knit along with me. Not that this is going to be an official knit along or anything like that, but we can always, knitted hats are such a nice palette cleanser. They're such quick projects, and I've been knitting so many sweaters lately that I could really go for a quick project. So I had a little bit of criteria for this. I never really intended to accumulate all free patterns when I set out to do this, especially when I was just looking for a pattern to knit for myself. But as I was looking through the results and through my filtered results on Ravelry for a hat in worsted weight yarn, I realized that there were so many very generous designers who were offering free patterns for hats. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice and fun and informative to throw together this list featuring just free hat patterns. I also wanted to stay with smaller independent designers. I think that a lot of those get lost and buried in the Ravelry busyness of the more well-known or even the commercial designers. So I really wanted to feature and try to stick to just smaller designers that maybe we've never heard of before. I also knew that I wanted to use worsted weight or an Aran weight. I feel like that makes a warmer hat, and where I live in Western Pennsylvania, we have cold winters, so I want a warm hat for my head. So this list isn't going to contain any lacework hats because I didn't want a hat with holes in it for the cold air to get through. The last criteria that I really tried hard to stay with, and I'm pretty sure I did, is that I wanted the pattern to be offered as a free PDF. There are a couple of the patterns that you have to go to an exterior website, and there is where you download and print your PDF. But all of these patterns that, as of the time when I have filmed this anyway, on November 14th, 2023, all of these patterns are offered as free PDF downloads, either on Ravelry, or as I said, there were a couple that you would have to go to independent websites and download that way. I like that because then I can just download the PDF to my phone, or I can print it out and take it with me, and I'm not having to navigate through the busyness of a pattern that's written out on a blog or a website. So I've basically organized this episode into 3 different sections. They kind of just flow from one to the next, but I'm going to start talking about the ribbed hats, more simple, classic ribbed hats. Then I'm going to go into some textured and cabled hats, and then we're going to wrap it up with some colorwork hats, both stranded colorwork and also non-stranded colorwork. So I love colorwork hats. Of course, I just want to knit a single color hat with this, so I was looking more for a textured hat. But when I saw all of the beautiful free colorwork hats that were offered, I thought I need to feature some of these because I am a big fan of colorwork. Having said all that, let's just get started. I do have my laptop set up to the side of me just so I can refer to it with the picture. I have my notes. Basically what I'm going to be doing is taking you guys through these. All of them are going to be either worsted weight or Aran weight. I will probably mention that. I'm going to mention the yardage needed, the needles that are used, and then any other notes that either the designer made or things that I just noticed myself about the pattern or that drew me to the pattern. And I'm also going to be putting up a picture of the hat right here to the side. So we're going to start out with the hat that is called Bankhead. This is by Susie Gourlay, and this is knit using worsted weight yarn on size 7 needles. This hat comes in 5 different sizes, from a baby to an adult extra large, so you're needing anywhere from 700 to 200 yards of yarn. And the designer noted on her project page, this was inspired by an old mining town that her and her family used to visit in Banff National Park. And the 2 sections of this hat, which is what really drew me to this hat, I love like the 1x1 ribbing on the brim and then how it changes into a wider ribbing on the top. I really liked the look of that. I love the contrast. She actually designed that hat to represent the 2 different portions of the town, the upper town and the lower town. So the residential section and then the more industrial section. And so I thought that was really interesting. I always like to hear the story behind anything, really. The inspiration behind the creation. I find that very interesting. Okay, moving on to pattern number 2. This is the Hill 60 by Galt House of Yarn. Again, a worsted weight pattern that uses 200 to 270 yards of yarn on size 7 needles, featured in 3 different sizes, baby, child, and adult. And the designer said that she designed this to resemble the sailors' watch caps that they wore during World War II. I like the way that the decreases look on the crown. That's what really made this hat attractive to me. I feel like this would be a great unisex hat, but particularly if you're looking for something that's a bit more manly looking for those special guys in your life. I feel like this would be a good match for that. Moving on to pattern number 3, we have the Lazy Traveler Beanie by Knots of Love. This is also a worsted weight hat that is knit on size US 8 needles, 8 and 9 needles, and uses approximately 150 yards of yarn. This is one of those patterns that there is a direct link on the Ravelry page, but it is not actually a Ravelry download itself, but it takes you to a PDF link the link takes you to a PDF that you can then print. I like the look of this ribbing. It looks like, from when I was looking at the pattern, it looks like there is a large section of stockinette, and then you have a purl, and then you have a knit, and then you have a purl, and then it goes to the large section of stockinette and like the back and forth the whole way through. And I think that really is a nice ribbing. It changes it up a bit from like your normal 2x2 ribbing or 3x1 ribbing. I like the look of that. And then you also have a folded brim on this one as well. Pattern number 4 is the Rusa by Joanna Ignatius. And this one is going to be a little bit different because it's actually knitted using mohair with whichever other yarn you choose. So it comes in 3 sizes, small, medium, or large. And the designer said on the Ravelry page that you can either knit this with 2 strands of fingering plus a strand of silk mohair held all 3 together to knit it, or you could just take a strand of worsted weight yarn, hold that double with a strand of mohair, silk mohair, and knit it with that. That is probably how I would knit it. I feel like it would just be easier to be working with 2 strands versus the 3, but you know, I like that there's that ability to change it up. I feel like that opens up a lot of possibilities for yarn combinations. So you knit this on a needle that is a size US 10, and this hat is knit in fisherman's rib. I like that I feel like this hat would be super warm because it is, first of all, it has the mohair in it, which I find is a very warm fiber. And then also the designer has designed this so that you have a double folded brim. And I didn't download the pattern and look exactly how you do that, but she said there's a trick also so that both the hat body and the folded brim show the right side of the knitting. So it looks more seamless and matches. So I thought that was really interesting. But if you decide to knit this with your fingering weight and the mohair, you would need about 100 grams of fingering and 25 grams of mohair. She just made that note on the project page. Okay, let's move on to number 5, and this is the Towards North Hat by Asita Krebs. This is an Aran weight. It's one size, although the designer says that it is extremely easy to adapt the size. It requires 120 to 160 yards of yarn, and it is knit on a US size 7 and 10. It starts with a half twisted ribbing, and then the ribbing is then separated with something that is known as a vicle braid. I've never heard of that before, but I find that very intriguing. And then the vertical lines in this hat, in the body of the hat, are achieved by slipping stitches. Now, the thing that I did not even notice the braid that runs between the brim and the body of the hat until I read it in the description. The thing that really drew me to this hat were the vertical slip stitches. I thought that that was so beautiful. It's so crazy that you can just slip a stitch and it can make your knitting just look extra special. I mean, it's such an easy technique just to slip a stitch. So that is what really drew me to this hat in the beginning, those vertical lines. Okay, so let's move on to hat number 6, which is the Marin Hat by Kimberly K. McEllenden. This is a worsted weight hat that requires 160 to 180 yards of yarn, and it is knit on a size 6 and a size 8 needle. This pattern is written for only one size, and you can wear it with the brim folded for a more fitted look, or the designer states that if you just leave it unfolded, you can achieve the slouchy look. I love the look of this. I love that textured portion of the hat body. It looks to me like maybe those vertical panels are stockinette, and then the sections in between each stockinette look like they might be moss stitch or seed stitch. So it's really pretty. I love textured hats. I think that the texture adds warmth because it gives more thickness to the fabric, and then I think it just is beautiful because you have the different textures. So I'm really attracted to textured hats. Okay, coming up for number 7 is the Mock Cable Hat with seed stitch, and this is by Karen Van Rayden. It's a worsted weight yarn. It takes approximately 210 yards, and you knit this using size US 3 and 6 needles. It's a one size fits most, and the thing that is unique about this hat, because I actually saw several hats that looked very similar to this. They had the brim, the ribbing on the brim, and then they had like a seed stitch or moss stitch for the body of the hat. But the thing that is unique about this particular pattern is that in that brim, there's actually a faux cable. So you won't need your cable needle. If you've never cabled before, no big deal, you can still do this. but I think it just adds a little bit of uniqueness to this hat that you have ribbing plus a cable worked into it, and I think that's a really beautiful touch. Okay, number 8, we have the Trinity Stitch Cap by April Cooper. This is a worsted weight hat that requires 150 to 200 yards of yarn, and it's knitted on size 7 needles. There is one size that is, this pattern is written for one size, but the designer claims on the Ravelry page to give suggestions in the pattern on how to change the size of the hat if you want to knit it in a different size. I like this hat because it looks, that texture on it just makes it look chunky and interesting. So it also looks like it would be really super squishy and cozy, which was another reason that I was attracted to this pattern. So it looks like it would be a rather easy and simple pattern to knit. And I really like it in that off-white yarn that this picture is, the pattern's featured in this picture. Okay, number 9, we have the Rockhound by Danny Sunshine. Another worsted weight hat that requires 140 to 190 yards of yarn depending on the size, and it comes in 3 sizes: a small child, older child, and then adult. So this is like a chevron or a zigzag texture pattern, and it says that that is achieved just using knits and purls. This pattern is both written and charted. And then another thing that's a bit different about this is normally when we knit brims on hats, our hat brims are normally like a 1x1 or a 2x2 ribbing. This brim actually features a garter stitch brim, which is something that you don't see very often. And I've never knit a hat with garter stitch brim. Okay, next up, number 10. Rotten Mutes by Tilly O. Worsted weight hat, 219 to 273 yards, knitted on a size US 4 and 6. Comes in one size. The pattern claims to be a beginner-friendly pattern. The thing that drew me to this pattern was the beautiful diamond pattern that's on it, and I'm pretty sure that this hat is just knits and purls to achieve that diamond pattern. So it's again, I think this would, I mean, the pattern designer claims that this is a very beginner-friendly hat, and I think that, you know, it's just amazing to me that just by using some purl stitches that you can get something that looks more intricate, but it's not difficult to make. Okay, look at the beautiful motif in this next hat. This is the Trellis hat, the Twisted Trellis Hat by Cara McKinley. This uses an Aran weight yarn, 175 to 200 yards. It's knit on a size US 8. This pattern is written for 3 different sizes: teen/small adult, medium adult, and then large adult. If you go onto the Ravelry project page for this pattern, it will actually take you to the designer's website where you can then download the PDF of this hat. And as a bonus, there is also a matching cowl that you can also download a PDF for free. I was reading on the project page, and this may look like it's a complicated pattern to some people, but it actually uses slipped stitches and twisted stitches to build that trellis motif. I think it's so pretty. I don't know, it's in the, like, this is definitely one that I'm considering knitting with my farm yarn, so definitely going to be considering this one. Okay, moving on to number 12. Actually, 12 and 13 are these were written, I think, maybe in 2021. I can't remember the year. I remember looking at these patterns before, but this was a collaboration that Kelborn Woolens did with independent designers to offer a year of free hat patterns on Ravelry, and a year's worth of free hat patterns, and they remain free to this day. So the next 2 patterns are from that collaboration. So the first hat we're going to talk about is the March Hat by Megan Babin, and this pattern calls for approximately 220 yards. I think that all of these patterns were designed to use the Kelborn Woolens Germantown yarn, which I've never used that yarn, but it's been a yarn that's been very intriguing to me. If you've used it, let me know what you think about it in the comments. But this pattern is knitted using size US 3, 5, and 7. So 3 different needles, which is kind of unusual for a hat. It's written for 2 different sizes. It does use a tubular cast on. And I did pull up this, I did download this pattern to my computer yesterday so I could kind of read through the pattern because it was intriguing to me. Why does it need 3 different needle sizes? Like, you know, what is this tubular cast on all about? But you can actually choose to knit this hat using a regular, like, stretchy cast on if you don't want to go through the whole thing of using a tubular. And the way that this pattern designer does it is using a crochet and doing like a provisional type cast on, or so a crochet hook. I never didn't finish that. But the pattern does tell you, if you don't want to do the tubular cast on, it does tell you how to do the hat in with just a regular cast on, which is really nice. And that honestly is probably how I would do it. I really liked the texture of this hat. The pattern was written so that this motif resembled seersucker fabric, which I think they did a really good job with that. So it's the texture that attracted me to this hat. I think the pom-pom is really cute. I have actually knit multiple hats with pom-poms, but those aren't typically the hats that I like grab to put on. I feel like they maybe just tug a bit in the back and pull my hat off of my head. So as with any of these hats that I talk about, I probably wouldn't do the pom-pom if I knit these patterns, but pom-poms are fun, right? So if you like the pom-pom, make the pom-pom, wear the pom-pom. Okay, number 13 is another one from the Kelbourne Woolens collaboration, and this is the February hat, and this is by Kate Gignon Osborne. It is a worsted weight, 220 yards, size US 4 and 6, and it is written for 1 size. You do use a provisional cast on for this particular pattern, and then you do your brim, and after the brim, you go into these texture panels that are charted. Now, I would say that this, and I think even the designer claims this on the Ravelry page, but this probably isn't the best pattern to pick if you are a beginner knitter, because there's lots of different textures. You've got the provisional casts on. There's a few things in this hat that may be overwhelming to somebody who's just beginning to knit. But if you're looking into learning how to, the sun is out today and it's in and out from the clouds. We're having a lot of light shifting here going on. But if you're wanting to get into reading knitting charts, the designer does state that this is a good intro to reading charts because the body and the crown are charted. I don't think they're written out at all. So just keep that in mind if you pick this. I was attracted to this hat because I like the different panels of texture in it. I thought that was really interesting. I feel like that would make it a really fun knit, because where I sometimes get hung up, not so much in hats because they're such quick projects anyway, but when I'm just doing a lot of stockinette or doing a lot of the same thing, I tend to get bored and I lose interest, and then it just becomes a project of perseverance. When you have texture or color changing, I just really find that very interesting, and it keeps my attention and it just keeps me forging ahead in the project. So all the different panels of texture is pretty much what made me think that this was a cool hat to maybe give a shot to. Okay, number 14 is the Lucky 7 hat by Weaselana. This is worsted weight, only requires about 125 yards of yarn, and it's knit using US 7. It's only written for 1 size. The designer said that the reason she called it the Lucky 7 hat is because it has 7 cables around. Each vertical cable stripe has 7 cables going up it, and then each individual portion of each cable, okay, let me rephrase that. The cable is actually crossed on the 7th round. That makes more sense. So it's like 7, 7, and 7. Then the cables are separated, so the cable panels are separated by knits and purls in between. And one thing I really liked, I've not done a prolific amount of cable knitting just because it is an extra step. I know that you can knit cables without a cable needle, which I've done that when I knit a pair of cable socks one time. I figured out how to do it just by pinching my stitches. And I think also depends on how big your cable twist is, like how many stitches that is. But I think that this would be potentially doable without using a cable needle, although I cannot say that for sure, so do not hold me to that. But I also really like that the cables stay the same width, even through the decreases of the crown. Usually in the past anyway, when I've knit cable hats, the cable actually gets smaller as you decrease, which kind of, it makes sense, but I like that these cables stay the same width the whole way through the decreases. Now we have another cabled hat, and this is the Braided Homegirl Hat by Roxanne Villamere. Worsted weight yarn, requires about 65 grams of worsted weight yarn, and it's knit on a size US 6 and 8 needle. It is categorized as an advanced beginner pattern. The cables are separated by purls, and I really liked these cables because they reminded me of plaited hair or braided hair. They look so nice and tight. And my daughter does this braid. She taught it to me. I think she calls it a Dutch braid. And these cables reminded me of that braid. And I just found them really feminine looking and really beautiful. So I'd actually really like to give this hat a try. Maybe not with this yarn, but in the future, because I just love the tight neatness of those cables in this hat. Okay, moving on. So this designer is a very well-known designer. So this pattern does come from a big designer, but this is the Antler Toque by Tin Can Knits. And maybe a lot of you have heard of this. I've heard of it before, but I never really looked into it. But this is knit with worsted weight yarn, 120 to 200 yards of it. It uses size US 6 and 8 needles. It comes in 4 sizes from baby to adult. I like the nice wide cables on this hat. I actually think this hat would be really beautiful with rustic yarn, but I just like the look of the wide hat. And I think my favorite thing about this hat is the crown. The crown decreases. Look at this. It's beautiful. I love it. It's like a star pattern. This is so beautiful. I just love this. I would knit this hat just for this crown. I mean, this is just gorgeous to me. Okay, now let's move into the color work section of this episode. So our first color work hat that we're going to talk about is the Snowflake Hat by Evan Plavinsky. And this is worsted weight on size US 6 or 8, 6 and 8. I'm sorry. This is stranded color work. It is charted. I don't know how you would write a color work pattern, and it wouldn't be charted. So all of these color work, like the stranded, are charted patterns. The really cool thing about this is the designer actually included a reverse color chart for people who want to use a dark background and a lighter contrast color. Really nice that this designer offered this pattern for free, and then she also offered the reverse color chart for those of us who might want to change the contrast color and make like the colors different than what the chart is written for. So I thought that was really nice of her to do that, or nice of him to do that. Okay, let's talk about the next hat. Number 18, Metanet Hat by Miranda Grant. This is worsted weight, 200 to 275 yards, knit on a US 6 needle. It is only knit for one size, and it's 2 color stranded color work. And like all these color work, I'm not even going to say that it's charted because I feel like that's just color work. Stranded color work is charted, as I said. The thing that I love about this hat is that it has a more modern look, and it has this chevron-y or arrow or feather motif to it, and I just think that that would be, well, first of all, it's a more contemporary or modern look. And also I think you could just have a lot of fun playing around with that and picking your colors. So yeah, really like this one. One of those things that I'm thinking, wow, this could make a really nice gift for somebody. Okay, number 19, we have the Laurel Hat by NW Foraged. Worsted weight with 218 yards, knit on a size US 6 and 7. It only comes in one size. This features a small and simple Fair Isle pattern. It's worked with no more than 5 stitches between the colors, so you don't have to catch floats or anything like that. And I agree with this. It was stated on the project page this would be a good first colorwork project, and I agree just by looking at it. It's such a small portion, like the colorwork is just a band of colorwork, and I love this like tan color with the dark blue. I'm a sucker for blue and white, and this is really close to that. I would knit this hat in exactly those same colors. And I love that simple motif. Sometimes simple is better, you know, and I just feel like that hat is so beautiful. And one thing I will say, and this has to do with all the colorwork hats, if you are a tight knitter, or maybe if you you're finding that as you're knitting your colorwork, your tensioning is tighter, I would definitely recommend going up a needle size. So if you were knitting this and you found that that band is really drawing in the middle, because you're going to have knitted your brim and part of the body before you start that strip of color work. And if you see that that color work is really drawing in tighter, you may want to consider going up a needle size to a size 8. I think I think the pattern says to do the body in a 7. So if you would go up to an 8, and then just try to be mindful of your tension, which is what I always do in my color work. I just try to be mindful of how I'm carrying my floats behind and make sure I'm not pulling them too tight, and just try to stay relaxed. Maybe don't knit color work if you're feeling really tense. Number 20 is the Wendy Hat by Finn Knits. Worsted weight 160 to 200 yards, knit on a size US 4 and 7. It comes in one size, which is categorized as an adult medium. I love the large diamond motif that's featured. I think that that would be really pretty with like a variegated yarn or a color changing yarn for the color work portion, like the contrast color. I feel like that would be really fun to do something like that. And the designer states that this is a good first pattern for learning charted color work. Okay, let's move on to number 21. And this actually is not stranded color work. This is the Amethyst Wish Toque by Elizabeth Lubowitz. It's worsted weight, only uses 100 to 115 yards of yarn. It's knit on a size US 6 and 7. Comes in one size, and it uses broken seed stitch to make the color changes. So you're using 2 different colors of yarn, or if you could do more than 2. You would just treat it like you were knitting stripes. And but the nice thing about this is you're only using one color per round. So you're not having to manipulate 2 strands of yarn at one time. You're just using one per round. So if you're not feeling up to trying stranded color work, you could always try this. I think it's maybe similar to mosaic knitting, although I didn't read the pattern, so I can't be sure of that. Okay, basic Norwegian star hat is the next one up, and this is a hat that I actually personally knit, and here's the picture of mine. I knit this for myself, and this was one of the very first color work projects I ever did, and I realized that I knitted the color work portion too tight, so it did not fit me well. So my husband ended up getting this hat, and this is his hat now. His head is smaller, plus I have hair and he doesn't have hair like this, so naturally I need a little bit of a bigger hat. But he loves this hat. He claimed it. I think he probably would have claimed it anyway. Here is my version, and then here is the pattern, or the picture from the pattern page. Anyway, this is knit in Aran weight. I think I used lamb's pride wool when I did mine. It's it didn't say how much yarn that you would need, but it is a 3-color colorwork stranded project. So you're going to need 3 different colors. I mean, you could adapt it and just do 2 colors, but the pattern's written for 3 different colors. And it is a pretty popular pattern. Over 2,000 projects are listed on this pattern page, which that may not sound like a lot, but it is for a free pattern from a smaller designer. And I forgot to see who this designer was. Let me look here if I can find it. Cara Jo Knapp is the designer. So after knitting mine, I would suggest going up a needle size. Now, I could probably maybe get away with it now because I'm much more mindful of my tension when I knit color work. But I feel like it's always a good idea just to go up a needle size when you're knitting the color work portion of a pattern, because it is just easy to make that part a little bit more tight than the rest of the hat or sweater or whatever it is that you're knitting. Okay, moving on to number 3. We have 3 patterns left. This is called a stranded hat recipe. I cannot pronounce this name. I was trying to practice. I'm going to put it right down here because I could probably get the first name, Sudeshna, but the last name is very long, and I'm sure that I would just not pronounce it correctly. So I'm going to list the name here. This is a Aran weight hat. It uses 100 yards of your main color and around 30 yards of your contrast color. And it's written for 3 sizes: adult, small, medium, and large. It uses a tubular cast on, or you can use any other stretchy cast on. Now, this pattern has 2 different color work options, and they are charted. And I think when I was reading the project page for this, the designer said that this was a recipe. And typically when I think of a recipe, I think of a very general, very vague, like a pattern versus a recipe. The pattern's going to be more specific, going to give you more details, where the recipe is just going to give suggestions. Now, because this was called a recipe, I did download it because I wanted to read through this pattern. Now, I have been knitting for a while, so it is possible that I just assume things because I just assume because I've been knitting for a while. So perhaps I'm wrong about this, but I think this was a pretty detailed, thorough looking recipe. And I feel like this is a pattern. I don't know. The chart was nice. Yeah, I haven't knitted it, so maybe if I was actually knitting it, I would feel like it was more of a recipe, or it made more suggestions than actually telling you how to do it. I don't know, but I thought it was pretty thorough. So like I said, there's 2 different color work options. I would not recommend this as a first color work project though, because both of those color work options, you're using 2 to 3 different colors. So you are going to have some rows. It didn't look like there were many, but there are some rows that you're going to be holding and manipulating 3 strands of yarn. And I know some people really don't like to do that because it just gets a little trickier. So just keep that in mind. Okay, moving on to number 24. This is one of my favorites of this list. This is called the Flying Geese. It's by Streely Made Designs. It's an Aran weight yarn, 160 to 210 yards, US size 7 and 9, and it comes in one size, which it says is like adult, small to medium. I love this color work motif. I don't know if it's because, when I looked at this, isn't there a quilt motif, the Flying Geese or something like that? First of all, it's just really simple. I think simple can be really effective. And I'm looking at it, which is why, excuse me, I'm looking off to the side. But I love geese. I love when I hear the geese flying back in the spring, because I know spring's coming. I know the weather's getting warm. And then when they fly south in the fall, I'm like, no, come back. So I don't know if that's why I like this so much as well. I don't think so. I just really like the look of this. This is another one of those patterns that I feel like you could knit as gifts for people. And it's more contemporary or modern looking. I don't know. I just really like the look of this, and I'm definitely going to be knitting this one. It claims to be a simple pattern. It uses a 10 stitch repeat, You need 160 yards of your main color and approximately 40 yards of your contrast color. I don't know, guys. I'm going to be knitting this one. I really think that I will be talking about this one on a future podcast episode because I'm really planning on knitting it. Okay, and now our last pattern for this episode. Now, this is actually a brioche pattern. For those of you who are not into brioche, I don't know, maybe you want to try it out. Maybe you've never done it before. You're intimidated by it. Well, this is the Brios Starter Hat by Marin Hat. And it is knit in worsted weight yarn. You're going to need 2 different colors of it unless you want to make it a solid, which you can do that with brioche. But I think the thing that is so cool about brioche is that you can get 2 different hats out of one by using 2 different yards. I'll get to that again in a minute here. So, US size 2.5 and 4, although the designer did say that she is a pretty tight knitter, so you probably should check your gauge on this one, and you may have to manipulate the needle size to get the right gauge. So this is a 1 size, and the designer wrote this as a first-time brioche project, and so there you go. If you're looking to try brioche and you're intimidated by it, give this one a shot. I love brioche. I haven't knit a ton of it, but it makes such a beautiful multicolored texture, and it's a thick texture. And then when you knit a brioche hat with 2 different colors, it's reversible. So you can flip it inside out and get a totally different look with the second color being more dominant. And then when you put it right side out again, the other color is more dominant. So I think that is really cool because you're basically getting 2 hats in one. So it's been a while since I've knit brioche, so I may give this one a go as well. I already have so many hand knitted hats that I don't wear a lot of them. I have a few favorites, and most of those are like the really warm ones because most of the time when I'm wearing a hat, I really need a warm hat. But I think it's fun to knit hats as gifts. I think, if you're doing charity knitting, you could knit hats for that as well. Hats, as I said earlier, a nice pellet cleanser because they're small. And then you throw in like worsted or Aran weight yarn, and then it's a really quick knit too. And then if you're looking to try a new technique, such as brioche or color work, it's small. It's not as daunting as a whole shawl or a sweater. So I feel like a hat is just a good start and a good project to use if you're wanting to learn a new technique. So yeah, this is my list for you guys. 25 free worsted or Aran weight hats to knit for the winter. If you want to check this out, I've provided a link to the Ravelry bundle. So you can go there and you can look at all of them online. I'm not going to list them out individually. I'm just going to give you one link and you can go to the bundle, and then you can find each link, each project there. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Now I just need to figure out which hat I'm going to knit with this beautiful farm yarn from Flower Hill Fleeces. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have any suggestions on which hat? It's going to be a textured hat. I don't think I want to just do plain ribbing. I think I want to do one of the textured hats I talked about. So if you guys have any suggestions, let me know down below if you think I should make a certain pattern from my list, which is what I'm planning on doing. I just need to narrow it down, and sometimes that can be hard, right? Especially when we have all these awesome choices. And another, I just want to thank these designers who put all that time into writing a pattern and then who offer them for free. That is, I greatly appreciate it. That's so wonderful and generous of them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to making some more of these themed videos. Stay tuned because next week I plan on releasing my new scrappy episode. So last year at the end of November, I think it was November 22nd, I released an episode all about great patterns for those advent calendars that so many of us get. And I've been doing my research, and I have another wonderful list of patterns that I think would be great for your advent calendars. And these are all new patterns. These are not a repeat of last year. So that is coming up next week. So stay tuned for that. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you next time. Goodbye.